How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the After Hours podcast. This week, I have the pleasure of having on. Well, you don't really need an introduction because we work together every day. You're my best friend, and you've been on the podcast, a couple of times. So I appreciate you coming back.
Of course.
And I'm honored to have a gentleman such as yourself, Mr. Ed Smyth, the town supervisor of Huntington. I appreciate you taking the time to come out and sit down with us today to talk about, some of the stuff going on.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'll say it just so everybody at home sees this. This is my first podcast ever. So
There we go.
my pleasure to be here.
Honored.
I'm honored.
We're
as well.
honored. We're honored.
Normally, just to kind of get right into things, I like to, when I have somebody on the podcast that I don't really have a relationship with, I like to kind of take a deep dive into, how your story kind of started, a little bit about where you came from and how you kind of got to where you're at today, and then we'll get into things.
Sure. Well, my name's Ed Smyth. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Huntington, very proudly. Grew up just outside Huntington Village and went to local schools. Started out at Huntington Elementary, which is now Jack Abrams, and then went to Oakwood Elementary in the South Huntington School District.
nice.
Then went to St. Hugh's, which they closed shortly after I graduated from junior high school there. I think they didn't like the work product that they were putting out, so they took a look at me and said, hey, maybe we try something else. And went to 2 years at Chaminade High School and then 2 years at Friends Academy High School.
Friends Academy. I went to camp actually at Friends Academy back in the day. I love that area.
It's a very, very different school today. Beautiful school.
Different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very different. I graduated in 1989. And then
Very nice.
from there, I joined the Marine Corps Reserve in 1989. And then between high school and college, went to Parris Island, South Carolina. And then went to college at Widener University in Philadelphia. And then went to New York Law School immediately after.
That's amazing.
So
What So you said you were in the military. Where were you stationed at? You
at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you for your service.
Of course.
You're
Thank
welcome.
You for your service.
Thank you for letting me serve. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Of course.
I'd go back in a heartbeat.
You
know,
would.
I read a little bit about you, on the internet before we sat down today, and it said you grew up with two immigrants as parents.
I did.
And where did you guys grow up? So I
In
know you said in Huntington you grew
in
up.
Huntington.
Where were your parents from originally?
My father's from Dublin, Ireland, and my mother's from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Wow.
So and Glasgow, they went back and forth. But it was a formative aspect of growing up is having immigrants for parents. They instill a different. I think they have a different mindset, and you can see it. It's it's education oriented.
Right.
It's obviously hard work, but one of the mantras that my father used to say, still does so frequently to us, and from his mother, my grandmother, was education is no load to carry. And she would say that to him all the time. And ironically, my father, when he emigrated to the United States, was a high school dropout.
Wow.
And he got his GED in the U.S. Army.
Wow.
And eventually, after he met my mother, it was my mother who, unbeknownst to him, signed him up for night classes under the GI Bill.
Right.
And signed him up and actually, got him into law school, got him into a master's program. She did all the paperwork and said, this isn't working with you. You're going to get an education.
I don't know if they make them like that anymore. God bless.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
She really she whipped him into shape. And it worked out well for him.
Of course. Was there ever like a family business that your parents got into when they came to this country, or what did they start out? Do you know a little bit about their story,
Well,
like when
sure.
they came here?
Sure. My on my mother's side, my mother emigrated with her entire family shortly after World War II, and they had a business down on the Jersey Shore, a restaurant. My grandfather was actually a lawyer back in Scotland, but never practiced law in the United States. They had a restaurant in Spring Lake, New Jersey, and my father emigrated when he was 20. By himself, not with his family, but his sister had already lived here in Chicago.
Right.
And my father emigrated to Chicago first, and he was in the Chicago Meat Packers Union very briefly, and he because I guess his uncle got him a job. He knew a guy who knew a
Yeah.
guy. He got him a job in
That's how
the
it works.
meat packers union. Because my father, by trade, his family, they were all butchers, so he was skilled at it. So he worked there, and he shortly after he knew that in terms of having a future in the United States at the time, there was a draft.
Right.
It was 1959, 1960. Nobody was hiring a 20-year-old
Yeah.
draft eligible guy for anything other than pushing a broom or doing menial work, unless you've served in the Army or the armed forces. So he joined the Army, and from there was shipped right back to Germany, and he would go home on the weekends, and he would go to visit his mother in Ireland for so it was a big circle. So that's from there, that was that was where they got their start, and he got his start, and from there it's what opened doors for him in terms of education. He wouldn't have gotten the education that he has without having served in the Army.
Yeah, of course.
And where did you say that they grew up, or?
Well, my father grew up primarily in Dublin, Ireland.
Right.
And I got kicked out of a high school. He got kicked out of a country. He was politely asked to leave, but he went to Chicago first. Then he moved to New York.
Say Huntington. How'd you guys end up in Huntington?
My parents met in New York City, working for American Airlines, and then eventually the apartment got too small.
We're done with the city.
Yeah, they got two.
Yeah.
They had two children, and I was the third on the way. And I say lifelong Huntington resident, but shortly after I was born in New York City, but shortly after I was born, my parents drove out and founded Huntington, and
Amazing.
they settled here.
That's amazing.
It's about as long as you could be here for. That
Yeah.
is a lifelong resident.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
your whole family grew up here too. I mean,
Yeah.
Jared's roots are Huntington. I always used to joke around with him and his father, because his father's so well respected in the community, and I always commended that about his father, to be able to be so involved, and that's something I also wanted to kind of talk to you about. Like, when did you get to that point in your life? Was it before you opened up your practice? When did you decide you wanted to get involved in the community, and was there like a reason? Like, what was that?
Yeah, well, what happened with me was I went to law school. Fast forward, I went to law school, graduated law school, and there were opportunities out there. I wanted to practice law with my father. My father was a practicing lawyer, and at the same time, he was towards the end of his career. He was about 25 or 30 years into practice, and he was very openly saying, "I need to slow down."
Yeah.
And so I graduated law school. I started working with him, and just by the proximity of where my law office is, it's right in Huntington Village, almost diagonally across from Town Hall. You couldn't not be involved in the local community and seeing what's going on. My next door to Heckscher Park, I would see all the activities going on. Having grown up in the town, you just see and you keep your finger on the pulse of the town and the community, and you see it happening in front of you. So, from that perspective, I couldn't not
Be involved.
Right.
Exactly.
It would be
No matter
impossible
what
to
it is,
ignore.
Jared will get a phone call to go. No matter what it is, whether it's the community or kids in the community or whatever the case may be, he's he'll do anything to help this town
Right.
thrive, and that's something I always respected about him and his family. So I know you could speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's been
growing
since
up
I'm a
here.
young kid. I mean, my dad has been involved in the town of Huntington since forever. So I remember some of my fondest memories as a child is going around with him to different events. I remember there used to be a toy drive. They used to be at the Macy's over in Comac.
With the Kiwanis.
Yes.
And Jerry Asher ran
Right,
it. Judge
right,
Jerry.
right.
Judge Jerry Asher.
Yep,
What
and
a great man.
I remember being a young kid and running around, and it was just great to see how many different kids were there that were able to, maybe they weren't as fortunate as others and they couldn't get the Christmas gifts, and to see their smiles on their face. I'm a kid too, so now looking back, I understand the impact
Yeah, of course.
that those type of things, what they have on kids.
100%. What going to the next thing, which I wanted to kind of talk about. You started your law practice. You said with your father. So you were in business with your dad.
Yeah, very briefly with my father. He retired shortly after, about well, he wasn't fully retired, but he stopped practicing about 2 or 3 months after I started with him. He had some health issues, and it was by that point it was trial by fire. When it got into the practice, had a lot of people around me that helped me, and it took off from there.
Like that just goes back to everything we talk about, the people around you.
Yes.
Whether it's in life or in business, those are the people that are going to help you either go forward or stay stagnant. So it's nice that you had those people around. I work with my father, so I was curious on your opinion, but you said it wasn't too long of a time that you guys worked together.
Yeah. But he still does. He calls me, and he's always checking up on things. And in the last few years, he'll call me up and ask me about cases that have closed years ago, and I just I give him an answer. It's going great, Dad. But he stayed. He wasn't actively in the office, all the time, but he was always calling in, checking up, and was always a resource. Which is, to your point, that having the people around you and having those resources available to you is it's invaluable. But importantly, you got to call and ask.
Right.
Always reach out, because I couldn't have developed the law practice I had without having my father there as a resource.
Right.
That's amazing to hear.
And that's like with you having your father that you work with. Obviously, their goal is to have us be better than them. But no matter what, even if we do end up, being more successful as them in a different way, we still value their opinion more than anything.
Yeah.
And I got to give a shout out to my mom.
Right.
Mommy. Yeah. She, I'd call her as well. I mean, and I don't forget the fact that behind my father's success, my mother was standing right there.
Right.
Prodding him along, and through big decisions and big events, my mother was very involved in his success as well. So I've frequently reached out to her and gotten advice from her.
Right, and that's a blessing to have.
It is
both, because
It's not like that anymore. It's not.
They're both important, the most important pieces to the puzzle, and
of course.
missing one.
Yeah.
Unless you have a parent that can play both roles, which is very difficult to do. It does. It's not that it gives you the edge, but it just gives you a little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah. My mother and father, it was a great great relationship, great partnership, because my mother was much more of a steady, stay the course, very methodical,
Right.
get your education, finish your education, etc. My father is much more of a gambler by nature.
Right.
He'll roll the dice.
Right.
And he'll take risk, and sometimes it failed miserably, and other times it worked out in spectacular fashion, and other times everything in between. But
Right.
he was the guy you go to when is this a good idea?
Right.
So it was full steam ahead, go.
Right.
And then I'd take it to my mother, like, what do you think of this?
Right.
She'd be like, not so fast. Calm down.
Right.
So
So
it
you
was,
take both, and
yeah.
you weigh them out, and
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, you make the decision.
That's right. But an immigrant's heart, gambler by nature, has to be.
Right.
You're taking big risk.
All or nothing.
It's all or nothing.
Think about the risk they took when they decided to come to this country. So
Exactly.
I feel like that leads to anything in life. If you have that in you,
Right.
Whether it's in business or in a friendship, in a relationship, or whatever it is in life, you're gonna go full throttle, and give your all, because it comes from a genuine.
I've put that in perspective with friends who were born and raised in the United States, had all the blessings and luxuries of the United States.
Yeah.
But when you explain the immigrant mindset, and you say to them, okay, you've lived in the United States, you've lived here in this community your whole life. Okay, what would it take for you to uproot yourself and not go visit a foreign country? Pick whatever foreign country you like.
Right.
Just Canada even. Just any foreign country you like. What would it take for you to uproot yourself, and if you have a family, your family as well? Take everything and go, and not for vacation, not for an extended month-long vacation, but you're taking everything and going.
Right.
And that's a huge step, a huge risk.
Right.
No matter what support system or job you have waiting for you, if you have one, no matter what it is that you have waiting for you, if it's something or if it's nothing, that step is a huge risk.
Right.
And when I look at the risk that my mother took with her family, she was a child, when they emigrated. But my father, when he was 20 years old and he emigrated alone, these are huge steps that, to put into perspective, you ask somebody today,
Right.
could you do that from your life today and move someplace else? That's the perspective you have to have. And you say, and then envision yourself on the other side of wherever you're going.
Right.
How hungry you'll be
Right.
to achieve and to get ahead there.
Right.
And then you'll get a taste of what the immigrant mindset is like.
You know, I feel like those old school qualities in that older generation, you know, they really just don't make them like that anymore. I could even speak about my grandfather, who on my mother's side, he's from Canada, and he grew up raising, you know, he lost his father at a very young age, and he grew up raising his siblings. You know, he had 5 or 6 siblings that he had to financially take care of, and then they had to make a decision: are we going to come to America? And then when he came here, you know, he was, to make a long story short, he ended up being the dishwasher at the diner in Rockville Center that he one day bought, and now is in my family for 75 years, or however long it's in my family. And they made decisions for other people, the people around them, not for themselves. And I feel like this generation, or some people in this generation, to make that decision, like you said, to pick up and take your family somewhere else, you know, to start a new life, it's not like going somewhere for a week. You know, that's a decision that if I even had to think about that, I just can't fathom, you know, understanding how I just, like, what do I do? You know, but they didn't look at, you know, what are the obstacles going to be? They just looked at, you know, I have no choice but to do this for my family. And, you know, back to what I was saying is, you know, I respect that older generation so much because, you know, he was working for $3 an hour at the diner. However, he saved up the money to eventually buy the business, and then, you know, he bought some real estate around that area in the 1900s, and fast forward 50, 60 years later, you know, it's taking care of his family. You know, so the sacrifices that they made back then, you know, that older generation, you know, it's amazing to see how, you know, it's paid off. And, you know, some of us, I feel like, have those older roots. You know, my friend group, I feel like we were all raised old school, you know, with tough love, and, you know, we were never handed anything like some of the people that I grew up around. And I feel like we have a little bit of that old school generation in us, which, you know, makes us understand what we have to do to be successful, you know, as parents like we are, or, you know, in business or in life, you know. So it's nice to have those people around us and to hear those stories, because they just don't really make them like that, you know, anymore.
Yeah, it is true. And
What, you have kids? We didn't.
four children.
4 children.
Married. I wouldn't say my high school sweetheart, but
Sometime around there.
Yeah, I've known her since she was actually my high school girlfriend, one of her close friends.
Oh, very nice.
So
Look how that worked out.
So yeah, we met at Huntington High School. It was a battle of the bands. We can both vividly remember meeting each other for the first time at the Huntington High School auditorium.
Really?
It was right around St. Patrick's Day. I think it might have been on St. Patrick's Day. There was a battle of the bands.
And you were in a band?
No. It was like a talent show. I was in the audience, and
Oh,
so
okay.
was she.
Very nice.
And we were introduced then, and we stayed friendly, you know, all through high school, and college, and then after law school, I came home. She was home at. We were at Meehan's down in Huntington Village.
Very nice.
We saw each other. There used to be pool tables in the back where the tables are.
Mike and Pat, right?
Yeah. And you know, she came over, and the rest is history.
And that was it.
That was it. She says it was false advertising. I asked her. I invited her. I said, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?" I was going running. I said, "Oh, you want to go running tomorrow?" And so she was like, "Sure." So we went running out of Comset. Like, our first date was do a run around the loop at Comset State
So
Park.
that's it.
And she thought like I was an athlete and everything else. And I was dying. Like, I don't know why I said, "Let's go running." You know. So
First day back on the routine, you're going running.
And she's like, "I thought you were like an athlete and you'd go running," and I'm like, "Yeah, you know, you got what you get, you know."
What were you gonna say? False advertising?
Yeah. She's like,
A little bait and switch.
I fell for it. Yeah, I was like, yeah, you know.
So funny. Well, look, like you said, fast forward so many years later. You have four amazing
Four children. Yeah, I got 3 in college right now. Okay. One is a super senior. He's in his 5th year, finishing up because he lost a year during the quarantine. He's at CU Boulder. My younger son is at Providence College. My daughter's at George Washington, and my youngest daughter is a junior in high school.
That's amazing.
And it's great. You know,
it's been a journey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How do you juggle everything between your family, the being in politics, you know, being in, you know, your business, you know, still running? Do you still run the law firm, or How do you juggle all? How do you?
I'm still involved in it, but I have another attorney that's working with me who's doing most of the day-to-day.
Like, I feel like a lot of people nowadays, balance is something that is something that people talk about, saying like, how do you balance, your time between the family, the business, the things you want to do in life. How do you balance all of that stuff? Because the role you have, especially with the town, is so prestigious. How do you?
Well,
manage all that
in
time?
terms of balance, there's only 24 hours in the day, right? So you got to live by a schedule, keep the schedule, and guard your time jealously, particularly family time.
Right.
Don't let it encroach. I generally would pretty strictly. I don't schedule anything public events on Sunday.
Got it.
It's
your
a
family day.
family day.
Right.
And then try to take Wednesday as well as a outside the town hall, because Saturday is often a work day in public in the town hall side. There's a lot of civic events on Friday night, Saturday night, which is often, for most people, that's family time, is Friday night, Saturday night. So you just the way you balance it is you schedule it, fixed days on the schedule. And, obviously some things come up on Sunday that are, you can't miss, or on Wednesdays you can't miss. But generally speaking, you just, say, okay, Wednesday's my Saturday with the family, and we go out to dinner on Wednesday. Date night is Wednesday night.
Right.
And just try to manage and balance it that way. With the law office, I benefit from, proximity. As I said earlier, my law office is literally diagonally across from town hall. It's down about 100 yards down the hill. So I can, if I have to make an appointment, I can, cross the street and get to my law office. And in fact, there's a lot of times I can meet at my law office, and I often get a lot more town hall work done in my law office conference room than I do up in town hall, because when I'm in town hall, I have a designated parking spot in the town hall parking lot.
Right.
So if I pull in there, everybody,
Everyone
people,
knows you're there.
they look out the window, they see my car there.
That's it.
Next thing you know, they're up in my office. So I have a constantly, revolving door of folks coming into my office, which is fine. But when I need to, have a meeting or get something and focus on something and get it, work it through, I often, sneak out the side door, run down the hill, and just sit in my office and do it there, because there's rarely interruptions there. Although some people are on to me now, so
So now they're going down.
Yeah, they come down.
Calling that
yeah,
phone.
yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's just balance, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's balancing your time and setting boundaries, and saying, okay, and try not to have one set of responsibilities spill into another one and overlap it. So.
That's it's like the biggest, especially being a younger parent, because especially the business that we're in, being in the mortgage industry, just like, the attorney business, the law practice business, it's a career that requires the time to put in to be successful, and, to be able to, delegate and to use the schedule. I feel like being schedule oriented is something I've always struggled with, because you'll put something on the schedule, and then if something else comes up, you might do that, but no, you got to stick to your schedule, like you said, because
that is one of my, I talk a great game, like, I keep everything scheduled, but it's very, very challenging for me as well, and I get distracted easily.
Right.
Be nice and say I get distracted easily. I get involved in something, and and before I know it, the clock is just spinning.
Right.
And I'm I get focused onto one thing, and before I know it, I'm beyond a deadline, or I had a meeting that I'm late for, or whatever the case may be. So that aspect realistically is a challenge, but again, having that schedule is vitally important. And in fact, to one of the points of managing all of these things, I couldn't do it without the team of people in town hall in particular. I mean, the town has 700 employees, and they're broken into 17 departments, 17 directors, 17 deputy directors. This running an operation like this is impossible without a team of senior management in place, which we have, thankfully. It's been, I'll give a plug to my predecessors along the way. It's an extremely well-run town, not because of anything I did or anything any one of them did, but the continuity, particularly within the departments, of bringing directors in and keeping directors for a long period of time, and it's not a revolving door. it pays off in the operational side. And the day-to-day operations in town hall are very well run. We have, my biggest challenge, frankly, when I came in 2 years ago, January of 21, 22, was getting some of the senior managers to stay, the directors to stay, because many of them were eligible for retirement.
Yeah.
And I was pleading with them, like, please don't give me the first quarter of the year. Don't
Right.
retire yet.
Right.
Just give me the first quarter. Give me
Everyone's aligned. They're
Yeah.
on the same,
yeah, just so there's a smoother transition.
Right.
And they almost all did. It was great, and because you don't want to lose that talent and that experience on day one.
Right.
So we did that and got people in place that they could mentor for
Correct.
the first quarter or first half of the year.
Right.
And it went from there. But any organization is totally dependent on the team that you have.
Right.
And anybody that tells you, I run it by myself is A, is not telling you the truth, and B, if they try, they're a fool.
Right.
It's simple as that.
Completely agree.
Yeah. And I think it is very difficult, to balance everything when you have a family.
Yeah.
You have a family, you have a job, and your family is important to you, and you want to make sure that things are right. Like for us, we're early in our careers. We're 30 years old. We're at a time where we're working hard right now, and working the long hours of work is very important so that we could build, the path for the rest of our lives. And, it's hard to balance your work schedule, working from 9 in the morning to 8 at night. If you have any hobbies like the gym or, taking some type of classes, to also balance that. And then to also, come home and then have to be a husband and a father. It's very difficult to put all that into place and to mess that together. But my pop always told me, he said, Jared, your life, your marriage, your work, job will be what you make of it. So if you want to make it work, you will. Like you said, you designate a couple days for the family. Although sometimes it may get interrupted, that's just,
Pick it up on another day.
Right, you pick it up on another day. But at least, your family is used to having those couple of days where they know, okay, if this week it didn't happen, well, we had it last week, and, we'll have next week. So that's a little easier to manage when you do put those things in place. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Of course. I heard you were working on. I like talking about the mortgage industry a little bit. You're working on something for first-time home buyers with the town, or
We are working on that. If you're in the residential mortgage business, as you guys are, that how complex the regulatory environment is for doing so. So what we're trying to work out is a first-time home buyer down payment assistance plan.
Amazing.
Because my experience, I'm sure you've heard it as well, one of the most difficult pieces of buying a house is accumulating a down payment.
exactly.
A lot of times it's not the monthly payment that people can sustain and carry the monthly payment, but it's getting $10 or $15 or $20,000 in hand as a down payment.
Right.
Is oftentimes the biggest challenge. And conceptually, what we're trying to put together is a plan where the town of Huntington would stand in the shoes of a rich grandmother or rich uncle at the wedding and says, hey, okay, kids, go out and buy a house. I'll take care of the down payment for you.
Right.
If we had a down payment assistance trust fund that first-time home buyers could go to in the town of Huntington, that the trust would stand in the shoes of the rich uncle, rich grandmother, and say, okay, here's a down payment for the purchase, and we will. You go find the house that you're looking to buy. We're not going to get involved. We're not going to designate certain properties as affordable. Here's your down payment that you're eligible for. You go shopping. You go to a real estate agent. At that point, the town is out. You go find the house. You go close on it, and at the closing, the town will show up with the down payment. Or when they sign the contract, the town will show up with the down payment. And then but unlike your rich grandmother, the town is going to be there with a lien on the property, okay, and expect repayment, but only when you sell the property.
Right.
Or if you refi,
Refinance.
And take cash out, that's when the trust fund will be there so that somebody else could get the money and use it as well.
Right.
But the important part that we're trying to work towards is getting people into a home that they own, equity ownership.
Exactly.
Before I was in elected office, my background as a practicing lawyer for 26 years and a big emphasis on real estate and banking.
Yep.
And, with some exceptions, and, the foundation of personal wealth and financial health is home ownership.
Right.
Correct.
It's been demonstrated countless times everywhere across the country that people who own their homes generally have a greater financial stability than those that don't.
Right.
So the push, particularly in Huntington, for me, is it's not to get away from rentals. It's not that there's not a role for rental properties.
Right.
But in terms of young people moving to Huntington, rather than get them into rental units, give them another alternative, a way to get into an owner-occupied property.
Exactly.
Right. And if I may, I was going to ask you your opinion. Because I was just thinking, and for me, I went to Whitman and Huntington. Now, in the town of Huntington, you have, Harbor Fields, Northport, John Glenn. And I think one of the most important things about the town is that keeping the people that grew up here, that went to the elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, keeping them here, and giving them an opportunity to buy and continue living in Huntington, because, you have people that go away to school, they see what it's like to live out of state or upstate, and, maybe it may be a little more affordable in a different place, but at the end of the day, if we could come up with, like you said, a down payment assistance program,
A way to
maybe
keep them here.
specific to Walt Whitman graduates, John Glenn graduates, Harborfield graduates. Not to say that we don't want people coming from other towns and living in Huntington, because that's amazing, but just giving people an incentive that did graduate from the high schools and giving them a chance to then take advantage of being from Huntington and wanting to stay. Because I can name probably, I have a lot of friends. Let's say, 20 out of my 50 friends moved out of state. They moved
Because they can't afford to live here.
they can't afford to live here.
Right.
Well, it would be challenging for the town to come up with a program to target graduates of particular high schools.
Yeah.
It just
It's got to be for everybody.
yeah, it's got to be
Discrimination. Right,
Yeah,
right.
we couldn't say, all right,
Only
Elwood-
for-
Elwood, you're good.
Right, right,
Harborfield's not so much.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
But I'll throw a plug for the high schools and the school districts in Huntington. I mean, the town of Huntington has stellar schools,
Right.
almost without exception, and including one of the crown jewels of the Catholic school system, St. Anthony's. I mean, that's
Yes. Right.
also in the town of Huntington. And it's we have excellent high schools in Huntington, and what that leads to is we have here's a plug for the graduates. We have excellent employees. So the businesses should hire the kids that graduate from Huntington high schools.
Right.
But to your point, keeping young people on Long Island, in Huntington in particular, we have to have jobs.
Right.
It's not just an affordability. There's two sides of the affordability coin, and that is, one is there a housing stock available for purchase or for rent, but is it available?
Right.
Okay, and then on the other side of that is, are there jobs for those folks who live here
That are coming back.
that are coming back to?
Right.
And that's why, recently the Canon, was one of our marquee employers in the town. Northwell Health is another one. But some of these bigger companies, Canon, just on the expressway, they just went through the Suffolk County IDA and got a tax abatement to stay. Okay, which is important. I mean, it is a balancing act. Is okay. At what point do you start diminishing their tax base, their taxes, so that they stay here? But do you gain it back through employment?
Right.
And people far smarter than I do the math on that and say, yes, it's worth the investment in this corporate citizen of Long Island, because that's a regional company.
Right.
It's worth the investment, the public investment, by reducing their taxes
To keep them here.
to keep them here.
Right.
And exactly how that math works. That's a different podcast with somebody
Right.
smarter than me.
Is there a certain how long is your term with
4
Huntington?
years.
Now, is there an opportunity to get reelected after that term, or how does it work with?
Yep.
So, is there a
Town
certain
of Huntington has 12-year term limit.
12-year term limit?
Yeah. So and I'm 2 years into my first term. We just had this past November was my midterm election.
Got it.
So I was not on the ballot. I was in 2021, and I'll be on again in 2025. The state just changed the law, moving all elections to the even year. So I'll run in 2025 for a 3-year term, and then after that I'll run in 2028, which is a presidential year. It's being challenged. There's some concerns about it, but it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out, because you're going to have local elections running in a presidential year. So it's going to be, when I want to go out on the campaign trail and talk about parks, beaches, roads, and garbage,
They're focused on who's going to be running.
and I have to get my message out under the umbrella of a presidential campaign,
Right.
or and some others in a gubernatorial year. It's going to be very difficult.
Right.
And the ballot is going to anticipated to be pages long. So we'll see how that works out. But there are some concerns about transparency. There's concerns about messaging.
Right.
How do you get the public's attention on a local race when you're in the shadow of a presidential year?
Well, I think most of the older generation understand that the presidential election is not really going to benefit you as much as your local elections will. I think that our generation needs to realize that your local elections are going to
within your town.
what happens within your town is going to really dictate how you live.
And far greater impact. Your local municipal, the closer to the ground it is, the more impact it's going to have on your day-to-day life. And we see that every day in Huntington, where we're working on projects that are going to affect everybody's day-to-day life. And it's I just said it, but one of the reasons I tell everybody stay focused on parks, beaches, roads, and garbage. And roads are top tier issue.
Right.
Andre Sorrentino, our highway superintendent, has been doing a fantastic job with them.
Yes.
We've paved, I think, almost double the lane miles in 2023 than ever done before. So he's really doing a great job with the highway crew. But that, on a day-to-day basis, everybody uses the roads every day.
Right.
So that that's why it's so important that roads are the calling card of any municipality. Right. And I'm now in the habit, whenever I travel anywhere, the first thing I'm looking at the roads. I'm like, these guys, they don't know what
For
to
years I've been
I judge the local government by the quality of the roads now, and as I know what I'm looking at, I'm like, these guys don't know what.
I finally had to buy a truck,
Yeah.
because if you don't, you buy a rim and a tire once a week. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Not in Huntington though.
Not in Huntington. That's why I moved back here recently into the village. Not in Huntington.
And then roads are an everyday. People don't even notice them anymore. But that's something they expect.
Of course.
Garbage is the next. Garbage and recycling pickup. It's a couple times a week.
Right.
Has to get done. We pick up 65,000 households. In the town of Huntington twice a week, plus recycling, and comes out to about $2.19 per household per pickup, which is cheaper than a newspaper.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkably efficient system.
Right.
It's the choreography that goes into it, it would blow your mind, but it all happens behind the scenes, so that John Clark at the Environmental Waste Management Department, they make it happen seamlessly.
And I worked on that truck for a couple of years
there you
as
go.
a seasonal employee.
So it
Yeah.
as I say, if folks knew what it took to make it happen, so that they put their garbage at their curb every day, and a truck comes by and takes it, and it never comes back.
Yeah.
And it just disappears.
Yeah.
What happens after it leaves your curb? It's a remarkable system.
Right.
But it's again a different discussion, different podcast. But
Right.
something to pay attention to is what's happening now with garbage on Long Island. In the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be a very, very important topic of discussion, because the landfill in Brookhaven is closing, and then the question is, okay, what do you do with 49 million pounds of garbage a day?
Right.
Which is what Nassau and Suffolk generates.
Right. Now there's one in North. Is there one in Northport as well?
So there's the Covanta plant in Northport. That's a waste to energy plant.
Got it.
So when garbage leaves your curb, it goes into an incinerator,
Right.
which turns the turbine and generates electricity for about 25% of the households in Huntington.
Right.
It also produces about 9,000 tons of metal because when it burns, the metal is taken out by a magnet through the ash.
Right.
And it's from there, the ash is bundled up and it's deposited at the Brookhaven landfill.
Got it.
However, that landfill is closing.
That's not the one by Westbury? Is that?
No, that's out
No.
east.
That's
that-
out
I
east.
I grew up passing the Island Park dump, which
Yes.
that I think shut down.
That's closed as
years
well.
and years ago.
Westbury's, that's, we send our recycling to
Got it.
Westbury, Omni Recycling. They have the contract with the town.
Right.
And then Brookhaven is where the landfill, where the municipal solid waste, the ash is deposited.
Got it.
But that's closing. And that's the big concern because everybody's looking at it saying, okay, now what? Where is this ash going to go?
Right.
There's no commercialized use for the ash. You can't use it in concrete. There's very limited uses for it. So the next thing to do is it's going out to, right now, the temporary plan, I believe, is to send it all out to Pennsylvania.
Wow.
But that site is closing. And beyond that, it's Ohio. There's a lot of ash getting generated. So that's why I'm saying, I mean, it's I don't want to sidetrack this discussion.
Right.
But it's a major discussion,
Yeah.
and not a terribly sexy topic. To say, people don't want to know where their garbage goes after
Right.
it leaves their curb.
Right.
Okay, but when we're saying, what affects your life every day, local municipalities and local municipal government does, because while garbage collection happens every day seamlessly, it doesn't happen. Wait till the day comes where it doesn't happen.
Right.
And you'll see a huge upstream effect where people
Right.
are, what is going on? What happened to my garbage? Why is it still here?
Right.
Well,
And you have some great guys on the truck too.
You do.
By the way, when I was working as a seasonal employee, that we were working over by down by the beach, and there were a few older couples that sometimes weren't able to bring the garbage pail out to the street and then bring it back. So the guy, the driver let me know, hey, this house, we run up, we grab it, bring it down, and then we bring it back up.
Yep.
They're an older couple, they can't really access to, walk out to the street.
And it's one of the functions of the garbage the trucks and the sanitation guys is they're the eyes and ears in the community.
Yes.
They know what's going on, and when there's a problem, sometimes the first people to report it are the guys in the back of the truck. They're saying, hey, there's a problem here. And sometimes it's, somebody's having difficulty in the home,
Right.
Older couple or older person who's living alone. Oftentimes it's the garbage trucks that they're the first ones to notice, because
Right.
when that garbage pail's not there
Yes.
for a couple
right.
days in a row, people say, hey, wait, what's going on
So
here?
true. Right.
Knock on the door.
Yeah.
So it's, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but there's an added overlay with the garbage trucks and the sanitation workers they provide to the community. And it's just, again, it's one of those things that it happens seamlessly behind the scenes. Nobody notices it happening,
Right.
but they notice when it doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
And it's so I focus on a day-to-day operational basis: parks, beaches, roads, and garbage.
Right.
I can. My chief of staff, who's sitting over off camera, is chuckling. She's sick of hearing that.
'Cause that's
but
the lingo.
it is. It 95% of what we do in town hall falls into one of those four baskets.
Right.
We have public safety, obviously, and some seniors, the programs for senior citizens as well. But, on a day-to-day operational basis, parks, make sure the parks are all clean, make sure the beaches are available, clean. Garbage gets picked up twice a week, plus recycling, and the roads.
And I give a lot of respect to those guys. Just working as a seasonal employee, I'll never forget, like, the second stop
Oh, yeah.
that we had. I went and grabbed the bag out of the trash can, and it ripped all over me. All over. It was probably dog maneuver in there. I didn't need maggots from the summertime. It was brutal. That was the second stop. I had to keep those clothes on the whole time. The guy kept me on the back of the truck. He's like, you're not getting in here.
I would have went home. But it's amazing, to have the journey that you've had starting, with your parents coming to the country, to be able to understand that discipline and that hard work from such a young age, and then to want to give it back to everybody else. I feel like that's why people should want to do what they're doing in life. It's for everybody else. If you can't, and I always go back to talking about personal stuff, if you number one can't be, happy within who you are, whether it's in your business, your life, and be passionate about, what you do, how are you ever going to be able to help other people, and being able to help the community and be a family man and, do all of the stuff that you can do and stay consistent with it. That's amazing. I commend you for that. So I appreciate you, again, coming on the podcast. If there's anything that you'd like to share with the audience, like, Huntington's an amazing town. I lived in Huntington with my father about 10 years ago, and then we moved out of the village, and now I'm back in the village. And I feel like it's always been a town where, there's new businesses always coming into the. I think Snooki just opened up a store in Huntington.
She did. My wife and my daughter were there yesterday.
The line was around the
It's
block.
amazing. That's amazing, though.
She went with her friends. I was,
Right. We had a big real estate office
No,
down
that's
in the village as
yeah,
well.
no.
Yeah.
People always talk about Huntington. It's not like the other. There's plenty of great places on the island, but Huntington is always, I feel like, a staple on Long Island because of the way it is and the way it operates. So.
If it's happening in Huntington.
Yeah,
Right.
There's no question that what goes on in the town of Huntington. We pride ourselves on being the cultural epicenter of Long Island.
Yep.
We have the best shows coming to the Paramount and to the Angman Theater. The performances we put on in Heckscher Park. I mean, we have everything going on in Huntington, and I invite everybody to come. The best restaurants on Long Island are all in Huntington.
It's true.
The beer is colder in Huntington. The girls are prettier in Huntington. Everything's better in Huntington.
Everything's better in Huntington. You're getting reelected. You're up for reelection next year.
I'm getting reelected next
Right.
year.
You're getting that. I was right the first time.
Yes, you are.
Now, a big part of the votes in general, kids our age, young men and women in our age and our generation. Why don't you tell them why they should vote for you? What is it about you that sets yourself apart from the rest of the people that are going up for election?
Well, I don't know who's running for election against me, but it's not going to change my message. I mean, the message is I'm setting a stage in Huntington where the opportunity will be there for you. That's that's the message. Is Huntington is open for everybody. The opportunity is going to be there. It's just a question of who's gonna reach for it and take it.
Right.
And
Anything in life.
yeah, it's like anything, and it's not something that we're gonna set a stage that will provide opportunities with jobs, working on housing. Housing is a crisis across
Rent is so expensive.
yeah,
and
every market.
Mortgages
Right.
with rates.
But by doing that, what we can do on the government level is stay out of your way, but make sure that the stage is set for your success,
Right.
for your family's success, your financial success, for the community to succeed as a whole. These are all the things that we do by providing services on the municipal level in the background, and again, staying out of the way and letting it thrive, because it will, and the town does. Without any kind of heavy-handedness from the town.
Right.
So.
Need you in office in the future.
Well, listen, Dave. We just. I'll spike the football a second. Huntington politically. Huntington is a Democrat town. There's about 36,000 registered Democrats, 30,000 registered Republicans, and the rest are blanks and independent voters. And yet, despite having a significant, about a 20% voter enrollment advantage towards Democrats, the town of Huntington now has a 5-0 Republican town board.
Wow.
And that can't happen. It's statistically improbable for that to happen without getting a significant number of Democrats to vote for Republicans in Huntington.
Exactly.
Right.
And I say, there's no question that's happening, because I speak to, it's still local politics. I speak to, Republicans, Democrats, and across the board. And a lot of Democrats vote for Republicans in Huntington.
Right.
And because they see from what we're doing, it's not partisan politics. There's no, as we say, there's no Republican or Democrat way to fill a pothole.
Correct.
It's, this is local dog catcher politics. But I think what the residents of the town see is that we are fixing what needs to be fixed. We are cleaning what needs to be cleaned. Mm-hmm. We're providing the services that are necessary.
Getting the job done.
With no drama.
Right.
Keep the drama to a minimum. Get the job done. And I think that is one of the things that's translating electorally, at least at the local elections.
Right.
that you have a Democrat town that has a 5-0 Republican town board,
Right.
which can only happen if you're getting voters from all across the political
Right.
spectrum.
Exactly.
That means things have been being ran the right way. If I have someone that is on the opposite party,
Well, you had to think at one point. Do you ever want to be the president?
What's that?
Do you ever want to be the president? I feel like
Not for $1 million.
you're like the number one on the board in Huntington. That's amazing to take a
that's
position like that. I feel like you have to think at some point, like, could I run this country?
the president of Huntington.
That's more than enough.
It's more than enough, right? But listen, I really, again, I'm honored to have had you on today, and I'm sure Jared is as well.
Yeah.
If there's anything else you'd like to share before we finish up, but yeah, it was amazing to talk about some of this stuff, and hopefully our relationship will continue, and at some point we could definitely do this again. We would love to, and we always love to be involved any way we possibly can, with the town. I know you're starting that new program, so any way we can help, from our end, whether it's getting it out there and, sharing it with the people that, need to understand that that's something that's available now. I could maybe buy a home, once that's in place, when I thought I couldn't before, because like you said, it's really being able to put that money down and taking that step. That's what holds people back.
Yep.
So
It's not in place yet, just so your
Yeah.
viewers know.
No, of course.
It's something we're working on. We got to get we got to get through some banking
Yep.
regulations to make it
Right.
exactly.
because
New York State is
yeah, the lenders have to buy into the fact that there's going to be a second
Exactly.
a second lien. It's not going to be going to be payment on it, but it's going to be a quiet lien on the
It's gonna be
behind
a ghost lien.
Yeah,
Right.
ghost lien on
Yeah, well, they have. I feel like that's something
Yeah.
that can work out. Because,
Suffolk County has it.
yeah. So there's a lot of similar programs out there.
Exactly.
So we'll get through it, but that's going to be a big one. And then
It's exciting stuff.
I'll leave it with this: the place to watch in Huntington in terms of redevelopment is in the Melville corridor, where we are right now. Sewers are everything. There's a sewer line here. There's a sewer line going in Huntington Station. There's no discussion about development that can happen, without starting with sewers on Long Island. At least we live on a sandbar,
Right.
and
It's true.
unless you have sewers in place, there's not going to be any significant development that takes place. We do Huntington Station south of the train tracks to basically to Walt Whitman Mall to Jericho.
Right.
There's a sewer line going in there, and then down here in Melville, there's an existing sewer line that could be. We're looking to redevelop some of the vacant office buildings that are down here, and see if we can set something up where it makes it economically viable to convert that property to mixed use.
Right.
Nice.
And
It's all exciting stuff.
what could possibly go wrong?
Listen, if you don't take the leap of faith like anything
Yeah.
in life,
Yeah.
So again, listen, I'm honored to have had you on here. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks again, Jared, as always, and
Thank you, Ed.
we'll definitely do this again in the future.
All right.